Oh boy, here we are. It is March already, gentlemen. Good afternoon and happy Sabbath to both of you and to our audience. Good to be here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Oh man, I tell you, the Lord is good.
Bring you greetings from Alabama.
Birmingham.
Birmingham? Oh, that's right.
God.
Roger's in Birmingham today.
Yeah.
What's going on in Birmingham? Wait a minute. Rod? Before we go further, Roger, we need to talk about this bow tie. Dr. Henry, like every week, he's got to show us up some kind of way. The bow tie, man. What do you have to say about this bow tie, Raj?
I don't think he had the bow tie yet last week, so that's why he didn't come on. So this week, he thought he was just going to pop on and just take over. So listen, what can I say?
I see.
I don't know. I'm going to have to speak to Sister Henry because she's sure taking care of Brother Henry.
That's right.
Well, Doc Henry, we are happy to have you back, sir. We missed you last week, man.
Yes, man. Thank you so much for your prayers, man. Last week, I was at a mortgage burning service there at the Ridge Seventh-day Adventist Church in Avon Park.
Right.
And so we had a wonderful time, man, just celebrating what God has done in that area.
That's right. You built that church there, didn't you? You there?
Yeah, the Lord bless, man. Right. Yes, I was there, brother. Okay. Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah.
I was there when we bought the property. So, not when we bought it, but when we secured it. So.
Okay. Yes, sir. Yeah, that's good, man. It's one waters, one plants, and one gets the increase, brother. So God gets the increase.
Bless
but one plants, one,
you know. Good stuff.
So. God is good.
All right. Well, listen, we often spend a lot of time here, Raj, but I know we've got a great guest and a great discussion today. What do we need to cover before we can bring our guest on today?
Well, listen, last week we had a great time talking about slave food. I mean, it was just eye-opening, mind-blowing. I was talking to a few, matter of fact, I went to a pastor's meeting on the Monday, and a few of the pastors were like, wow. One of my coworkers were like, wow, that was so it was so edifying. They were so blessed by the presentation last week from our doctors, Dr. Columbus and Dr. Walsh. And so we are just so excited to be a part of bringing relevant material and content to you, our viewers. So thank you for your being here with us today.
All right. Well, one more thing before we do this, Dr. Henry, we missed you last week in this spot, man. But we need to invite our guest. I mean, our audience. There's something the PRT fam. What do they need to do right about now, sir?
Listen, Pastor Paul passed away. This is the time we got to share. I mean, we're getting good food every week. Something is being brought to the table. And today, right now, March the 5th, you need to share. So right now, share about 5-10 people right now. Give them
click,
share. Click so that they can experience what you're going to experience today.
Yeah, this is good stuff today. This is and this is an apropos time. And first of all, and we did this last week, we need to do it again, that here at the Pastors Roundtable, that our hearts and our prayers and our thoughts and even some of our funds and monies and stuff are going to really help and support what's going on over in Ukraine today. That kind of takes us right, Roger, into our topic today that's on the table. Where are we talking about today?
Listen. I'm still in disbelief of what's happening on the other side of the world in terms of how it's unfolded. I just want to, just as Pastor Paul has shared, you can even still help. ADRA, the Adventist Disaster Relief Agency, is heavily on the ground, not only helping in Ukraine, but helping in the countries around Ukraine with the refugee situation of all these people, these citizens who are leaving Ukraine and looking for help. So you can go to adra.org and you can donate funds there. You could pray at your church. You can educate yourself as to what these folks would need as refugees. Many of them may come over to a community near where you are. Oh, wow. So we want to be ready for that. We want to be in place so that we can receive our brothers and sisters from abroad. But while we were doing all that, while all that is happening, we recognize that there is a unique type of leader that needs to be in place when there's a crisis. Obviously,
Wow.
it's a crisis. When you look around the world, there's all kinds of crises. Even COVID-19 was a crisis.
That's right.
And so we want to learn, we want to talk today about what it takes to be a leader in crisis, during crisis times. And we know that your crisis may not be my crisis or the other person's crisis, but everybody is suffering or is going through some kind of crisis, and we need leaders during that. And there's a certain type of leader that can really help us maneuver through crisis. And so we're going to talk about that today.
All right. And who do we have that's here going to be talking with us about that? Dr. Henry?
Well, listen, we are so blessed to have within our presence Stephen Norman. He is a communication director for the Southern Union. That's comprises about 8 states or so. And, anytime there's a crisis, anytime there's an emergency, when they go across his desk, he's able to make sure the right information is given out. And he's going to give some information about that today. So we are so blessed all the way from the Southern Union.
Wow. Southern Union, the largest union in the
Stephen
division.
Norman. Yes.
That's
right. That's right.
Well, let's bring him on, ladies and gentlemen. None other than the Stephen Norman at the Southern Union. Elder, it's good to see you, sir.
Good to be with you. Good to be with you.
All right. We are excited to have you today. I'm going to ask Pastor Wade, if you just open us up with a word of prayer, and then Elder Norman, we're going to give you just a few seconds here, or a minute or so, just to address the audience, to say hello to whoever you want to say hello to, or to just give us a little overview of where you are and what you do and what you're doing, because we know we did not read your very extensive resume and introduction, but if there's stuff that you just want folk to know, we'll give you that opportunity directly after this word of prayer by Pastor Wade.
Let's pray. Father, once again, we ask you to come into this space, be with our viewers, be with our guests, be with our host. And Lord, we pray you gain the glory, is my prayer in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen. Well, I'm just happy to be here with you. My role with the Southern Union is to be the communication director, but also the crisis management director. And I don't know, when I first took this job, the day that my president told me, you are responsible for crisis management and don't let anything back up to my desk.
Wow.
I trembled. Crisis management is a very sobering responsibility. It's a heavy responsibility. It has several layers. You have to inform. In the context of fear, you have to calm. And in the context of the kingdom, we have to protect the name of God, the image of God. It's a lot. But under my responsibility is 8 conferences, 4 institutions, 200 and some schools, 8 K through 12, and about over 1,200 churches. That's a lot of responsibility. And but God helps us.
Yeah, and it's just you. So one might expect or suspect that there's not a lot of crises that happen. If we've just got one guy handling the crises, there must not be a whole lot going on.
Well, there's not just one. Every one of the conferences and institutions have a public relations director or a communications director.
Okay.
And I provide support to them. We also, because we have layers in our church, at the division, we have support, and we have support at the general conference level. So it's a large team, but this is the territory that I oversee.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Excellent.
Now, there was
Excellent.
another
Well,
part of your question that I didn't ask. What was the other?
oh,
Well,
we're gonna get there. We're gonna
yeah,
get there. But
we'll
we,
get to
Okay.
some questions. We
Oh
just
no, I
wanted
thought you
to.
had said something else just now. Okay, that's all right.
Yeah, no worries. No
well, no,
worries.
he was mentioning that you had a team behind you, and you shared a little bit about your team. And I know you have a team there
Yes.
with you at the union that works with you
Yes.
to help you mitigate what you need to there.
Yeah, but
So
they're responsible for the magazine. Crisis management is on the director. I heard
well,
a
Mr.
man one
Norris,
time say, "It's me one." I don't think it's me one, but
Wow.
I think it's all it's you're constantly God and you. It's a very heavy responsibility, and I think the other part of what you were saying is how often do we have a crisis?
Right.
We manage about 2 crises a month.
mm,
Okay.
Okay.
And interestingly, quite often crises happen on Friday after 12.
Okay.
wow,
Crisis is trying to usher in the Sabbath.
I'll
Mercy.
tell you.
That is right. That's
So listen,
Yes.
let's dive right in. Let's dive right in here.
All right.
And many of us have been glued to the television. We've been listening to breaking news over the last couple of
yes.
days. We see what's happening in Ukraine, and some of us are even lifting up and taunt and saying great things about the president of Ukraine and how he's leading during this time. Now, I know all of our crises are not at the level of what he's dealing with, but Elder Norman,
Right.
tell us how important is leadership in a time of crisis?
Leadership in time of crisis is critical. Very critical. It's critical to managing fear and to lead into a solution and to unifying people and energizing them. You've got to have all of that. And I think what we see in Zelensky is that he has that unity with people. And he is, even though they are fearful, because they sense that he is with them and that he loves them and that he exposes himself to the same risk that they're exposed to, it does something that creates a synergy in a nation that nothing else can do. You don't get the sense that he's different from the average citizen. You feel he gives everybody the feeling that he's with them.
He's on camera with a green T-shirt on. I mean, that speaks volumes.
Now I think we see Zelensky, but I've been tracking the pastors. I've been tracking the pastors over in Ukraine. And what we see them doing is tremendous. Many of them, just like Zelensky, says, no, we're not running. We are shepherds of our flock.
Wow.
We're going to stay here. And so they're feeding their people. They are making sure they have shelter. They're checking on them. And and they're doing something that we don't think about or talk about a lot. But one rabbi was leading the people and encouraged the nation to read the lament in Psalm 31.
Wow.
A lament is a Hebrew psalm that was used from ancient times to now to allow people to express their fears, their concerns, and then move to their confidence in God, and then make their request of God, and then end up with some expression. And the result of it is that it helps them move through their emotional their emotional response, and it unifies them as a nation. I think also many of our pastors during the pandemic experienced burnout. We would experience much less burnout if we learn the practice of lament.
Wow.
The lament is what helped me during this pandemic, and I used it to help. I taught people over in Africa how to lament because so many of them were losing their loved ones. But to study the laments in the Psalms, there are 59 laments in the Psalms, and the other laments in Chronicles and Jeremiah. We need to learn those.
Wow.
Elder, that's
Powerful.
fascinating. If I might ask you, just on the heels of that, lament may sound like a very foreign and distant term to many people now. Is there what are some other ways that are terms that we could use that are analogous to what a lament does? I know you explained some of that. So if somebody's going to a counselor, is there something, a term that maybe people would use like in a counseling setting that lament would be analogous to?
A lament is pouring one's heart out in sorrow or in fear, expressing one's emotions, but it always moves beyond that.
Okay.
It moves beyond the expression of anger, beyond the expression of fear, beyond the expression of the emotion to focus one's confidence, their sight and vision on God. Many times on a name of God, because the names of God were almost always revealed in a crisis, so that God revealed himself as by that name to let them know that he was the one. So
Come on.
the everlasting God, the living God, all of it. So when they are God, our help, oh God, our help in ages past.
Yeah.
So when we're in war, they had these laments, and Jeremiah lamentation is and Habakkuk are laments that were used, but and then it always ends up with praise.
Wow.
God,
That's,
we know what
that's
you're going to
a
do,
powerful
and
thing.
we
Yes,
thank
sir.
you.
that's
Right.
fascinating.
Elder, you literally just shared with me what I got out of what you just shared is that I have a role as a local pastor, but even as a local leader, I have a role when there's a crisis to help myself and my people to go through the lament process to help to process the situation that they're facing.
Wow.
Am I saying it right there?
You're saying it right. In fact, I even tell praise teams, everybody doesn't come to church at the moment of praise or in a spirit of praise. Sense your audience and start with lament and move to praise.
Mercy.
Come on, preacher.
But
Yes,
you
sir.
have to make the worship a ramp.
Wow.
A ramp.
And any lament that you choose is going to take them up that ramp to praise. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? Is a lament that Jesus said on the cross. Psalm 22. Psalm 42, 43 are laments. Psalm 31 is a lament. Go to Walter Brueggemann. Study him. Pray in the Psalms.
Hey, that's our hashtag for today, gentlemen.
Stuff.
Lament. Hey, that's going to
Pray in
be
the Psalm. Yeah, lament.
Yeah.
Lament. I love it.
Mercy.
Let me ask you this. We've heard this expression so many times. Never let them see you sweat. I don't know if you never let them see you sweat. How expressive should a leader be in crisis? I mean, are there some things that you should just say, well, you know what, this is not, I really shouldn't express this before the people, or should you just let it all out? How expressive should be in a crisis as a leader?
Well, I think you can be as expressive as necessary. I think we should be transparent. If we're not transparent and authentic, we're not credible. However, transparency only gets out of hand if we have lost that internal control that we need. I have found that as a leader, as far back as when I was in my local church, anytime that there was a crisis that day, God
Mhm.
would give me a hint about it during my morning devotion. And he would prepare me. He never let me go into a crisis without preparing me. But it happens
Mhm.
during the prayer moment. I tell people now that we tend to supplement our prayer, our work with prayer, but prayer is the work. And when we have that commitment to that connection with God, that unity with God, God will alert you, and then God will calm you that day because you see him working, you're watching him work. You don't feel that it's you and that you're responsible.
Mhm.
So you can be transparent then, because, and I think that's what Zelensky is doing. He's transparent, and that's what makes him so credible. And one that his people are following, because they say he's exposing himself. He's honest. He's real.
Mhm.
I don't think he would
Mhm.
have half
Mhm.
the response that he's having if he was not letting the people see him sweat. But his sweat
Wow.
is a controlled sweat.
I love it. The control.
Control
So
sweat.
so
That's good.
listen, Adon. I know that you. In fact, you mentioned earlier that there may be two crisis events that happen a month within our union. Can you give us this like a example of those events that you're dealing with a month, and then how do we communicate this to the people? In other words, I know that communication plays a very important part in a crisis, right? Communicating to the people. So give us an example of some of the crisis situations that take place, and then let us know how
All right.
important that communication piece is.
All right. The types of crises that we may run into in a month could involve a fire that burns a school or church. It could be a natural disaster. Uh, God forbid, there could be some kind of situation where a person who is trustee of money or trustee of children has acted inappropriately and it's gotten in the news. Uh, that's the most difficult kind. Then there are other crises, such as maybe, a pathfinder group traveling in a van has an accident and the people are being rushed to the hospital. We've had a number of those. Now, in terms of communicating with the people, there are layers of communication that we have to have. Our audiences.
Okay.
The primary audience is determined by the crisis or the level of the crisis. First of all, let's say you have internal crisis and you have external crisis. That's the type of crisis. An internal crisis is something that happens at a church and it's internal. You don't. There's a text that says, "Tell it not in Gath, publish it not in Ashkelon." You don't need to take that and make it public. That's a local, private, internal crisis. Then there are external crises that are known outside the local site of the crisis. It's known because it's in the media. It's known because perhaps people on social media have unadvisedly began to talk. Um, Sometimes we become our worst enemies because when we know something, think we know something, we go straight to social media and began to hurt our own church and our own God with stories that are not a witness to his goodness and to his grace. We can be real, but I think we have to be careful there. But I think that how do we communicate? I typically will help write the statement that is used for the media. I will also advise the local conference in how to communicate with their congregation or with the school board or with the parents at a school that are involved with that or that are affected by that crisis.
Elder, I'd like to follow up if I can, because I think in the climate of the church today, there's a lot of tension between these two topics, which we're dealing with right now. Because on one hand, it's transparency breeds trust. And then on the other hand, publish it not in Gath or in Ashkelon. And so those two concepts in many times, particularly in our younger generations, they see those things as there's tension there. And so they will say, and sometimes it looks like there's some things that we're going to cover up or not pay as much attention to or deal with as speedily or as thoroughly because it hasn't made it into the news media. But if it makes it into the news media, then all of a sudden it's all hands on deck and we're going to do something more than we would have done to address whatever that crisis was had it not reached out there. How do we respond to that kind of a view? Is that a legitimate critique of the church? Number one, and well, let's go from there. Let's start there. Do we treat some things differently there, and then we'll go from there.
All right, I think it's a fair critique. It's not accurate, but it's fair to ask, and it's a fair concern.
Okay. All right.
There's a lot more to a situation than what meets the eye. And there's some biblical principles that guide us, such as some things should only be discussed as far as it is known. Let's say if it's a confession, we only confess as far as it is known. Is that correct? All right. That guides us on certain things. Now, there are certain things I don't think we need to start hiding stuff or things that people need to know. We need to be transparent about those. But there's something that we have to be aware of. Sometimes there was a case that we had in one conference where we were being pushed to say something very quick. The person who was pushing us had good intentions, but was inexperienced in crisis management. This is a worldwide church. And this division has 11 unions. If there's two crises that occur in the Southern Union in a month, and sometimes 3 and 4, there are many more that occur across the North American division. Now, what does that have to do with speed? Sometimes after all the dust seems to have settled, there are legal cases. There's litigation that's going on. All of those cases affect each other. And if you have a new case here and you begin to talk without talking to our legal team, then we can say something over here that could actually cost us millions
over there.
in another case. All right. We have to think about that. This tax dollars. Unfortunately, here in the Southern Union, and we've got it controlled now, we led the division in litigation. Led the division. One of the things that caused us to lead the division are suits because of churches with vans, 18 passenger vans. When people insist on driving these and using them, then there's an accident. Then the same people who insisted on using them turn around and sue the church. And they want us to be transparent. And we will be. But there's a lot of, I know one time we had at least 2 suits like that going on simultaneously. If you got 2 suits, then you got to be careful how you talk. And so those are the things. We're not trying, I have not seen a desire to hide or to suppress information because we don't want the people to know. I think typically, as I have seen it, and I've been here for 14 years now, the only time that there's been a slowness of is because, number one, and it's always on the legal side. And I think we are more forthcoming in information than the lawyers want us to be. The lawyers will typically say, don't say anything. They want to win it in the court of law, but we've got the court of public opinion to deal with. And our brand can go in flames in the court of opinion. So we always have to balance that. And in the church, we typically will, depending on the case, will lean toward the court, trying to be as transparent as we possibly can, or is prudent. We have to think about what is prudent.
Isn't that's that thing that when you get arrested, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. Well, really quick, Roger, here's a question from Wu. I'd like to see if we can address.
But I want to. What I need to share will lead us to this very point.
Okay.
So as you know, you shared that you've had 14 years in the position. And it has changed over those 14 years in the way we communicate through crisis. You talked about writing a statement, but now I just came through. My conference is kind of in the shadow of a crisis right now, in light of what happened at a local school in our territory. And but one of the things I noticed is that it wasn't an ability for me to write a statement. The word was out there before it got out there. And nowadays, with social media, with communications, with everyone having some kind of telephone or camera and recorder in their hands, how hard is it to communicate the right message in today's society as a crisis manager or as a leader during a crisis?
I don't think that it's any more difficult to communicate the right message. Once you get the facts, and you write your statement, all of that's the same. What's happening, though, is that you've got the citizen reporter or the member reporter who got a little bit of the story or feel that they know more. Sometimes it's a pastor. In one case, we had a pastor who disagreed publicly with everything that we were doing to handle a very serious case. A teacher had been killed. And the pastor went on the news making a psychological assessment of a student.
Oh, wow.
He's not a trained psychologist. He had only had a passing encounter with the student, but now he's making a psychological assessment. When he's confronted about it, he tells us we don't know what he's doing, what we're doing. Well, we had to put in that case, we did have to, well, his president stepped on his oxygen line.
Wow.
So
that's one way to say that.
So that's right. So the question online: do we need to employ more people with formal communication and crisis training? What would you say to that?
No, I think we've got enough. I think what we've got to, I think what we have the training, and in this one union, there are right about 15 of us who do this. All right. We're also supported by others, and our ability to, and our understanding of social media and our ability to use it is cutting edge. I think what we have is, you always want one story, one message out there. There are people who cannot wait for one message, and but it's necessary to have one message. And I think if a person wants to put it on social media, I think they just have to be careful and have to make sure that they know the facts. And is it helping? Is it helping? All right. We had a case here in the Southern Union where a student went to school, a kindergarten kid went to school with a gun in their backpack.
Wow.
It was announced on social media. Why are you talking about a minor on social media? Why are you talking about the gun on social media? Why aren't you, before anybody is responding to it, it's on social media? You see what I mean? They were going to the wrong audience, to not to the people who could make a difference and control it. Somebody needed to reach the principal or the daycare supervisor and the parents and deal with it there. But a deacon in the church put it on social media.
Yeah, I imagine there's a lot of mixed feelings about that, because I imagine there are some parents out there who are like, yeah, I don't want your spin. I want to know, what happened and what took place. I want to know that it was there. But I think what people miss is that, yeah, without knowing all of the details from the correct source, you're going to have a run on the school with parents coming to snatch their kids up and bring them out and all kinds of things when the story has not been fully vetted to know exactly what all the details are. So
Cassandra just asked, does the church have people that watch social media? Yes, we are monitoring social media. We monitor not only social media, we monitor the blogs, everything, and 24/7. And I receive emails through the day alerting me to what's out there, what is being said. A lot of it, some of it we ignore. Some of it we respond to if it's worth it. But yes, we do have people who do that.
So now, we're watching you, Cassandra.
I will say that there are some that will take it as spin, but honestly, none of us would be able to keep our job long in the Seventh-day Adventist Church in crisis management if we were developing spin. You lose your job real quick that way. Now, I will, but saying that said, there are sometimes, in being transparent here, there are sometimes leaders who are image conscious.
Mhm.
Image conscious, and are concerned about how it's going to affect them personally. All right. And how it's going to affect relationships. Early in my career in crisis management, when I was still with South Central, one of the leaders of the North American Division, communication director, who I respect a lot, told me, Steve, your first responsibility is to protect the name of God. And if that troubles a leader, so be it. You protect the name of God and the body of Christ and let him worry about the rest. And I've lived by that ever since.
Wow. Well, that brings us to a very interesting segue into this next question. I think every leader has been in a situation when a crisis may have come that has threatened them or challenged them on whether it's a personal level or just they take their role very personally, and they're faced with the choice of either fight or flight. So am I going to address this? Am I going to fuss? Am I going to fight? Am I going to make a big deal of this? Or do I run away from it? So when it comes to good leaders, are there times when it is best to fight, or maybe when it's better to run away or leave the thing alone? Zelensky, we talked about the Zelensky thing. He could have run. He could have left the country. He chose to stay and fight. What are the determining factors that help a leader decide when am I going to what issues do I take head on and fight about in the middle of a crisis, and when is it time to just take my losses, cut my losses, and just run?
All right. Let's look at this on a national level, like Zelensky and the pastors that have been watching over in Ukraine. Zelensky has chosen to stay. In fact, you've heard his statement. I need ammunition, not a ride. He's not. And he says, you will see our faces, not our backs. As a leader, he's the shepherd of that country. The pastors there are the shepherds of their congregations. We are shepherds of our congregation. When our nation is under attack, we cannot leave it. There's an old thing that the captain cannot leave a sinking ship till every passenger and crew member has been evacuated. You've got to stand by. That's just the responsibility. Good. Now, on a personal level, sometimes the attack is not on your flock, it's on you personally. Mm-hmm. If the attack is on you personally, there's two words of wisdom that I have heard from people. Well, one from a Bible. If the attack, if the accusation is true, then do what you need to do to straighten it out. If the accusation is not true, I'll never forget an old preacher who came to preach for me during a time when I was being accused of something that was very false. And I wanted to straighten it out. He did not know what was going on. He was a guest speaker. He preached a sermon. In his sermon, he said, the devil can't throw you in the mud. He'll throw the mud on you. Mm-hmm. Don't wipe it off while it is wet. It will smear. Wait till it dries. It'll come off clear.
Wow.
If the devil cannot throw you in the mud, he'll throw the mud on you.
Wow.
Don't wipe it off while it is wet. It will smear. Wait till it dries. It will come off clear. I chose to follow that, and I followed it many times, and I've seen it work. God will bring forth your righteousness as the noonday. Psalms says that. Another thing, an old lady, 100 years old, told me. She was a widow of a pastor, a Methodist pastor, and I had baptized her. I went to her one day with a concern, and she said, Pastor, what prayer don't fix, don't touch.
Wow.
What prayer won't fix, don't touch.
Mercy. Come on.
There are sometimes you have to determine to take it to the Lord and leave it there and trust him with your situation. And I'm saying this when you are being accused and you know it's false. Now, if you know it's true, own up to it. Job, God said to Job, brace yourself like a man. When I read that, I said, buck up. Do the right thing.
That's right.
Confess it, straighten it out, make amends, and move on.
So listen, as you were sharing about the role of the leadership in crisis, we had the question about should we have more educated folks who are in the communication piece. I think one of the things we don't realize is that a lot of our communication leaders are very good at writing the story, telling the news, heralding what's to come. But there's a different kind of leader or a different kind of crisis manager that is needed when there is a crisis. In terms of, you brought out the point about prayer. You brought out the point about owning it. What other things can you share with us that a person who now has to sit in the seat that you're sitting in, that they need to bring to the table? Is this the kind of leader that is made before the crisis, or is this the kind of leader that is made because of the crisis?
Both. You're made before the crisis, but you develop in the crisis. You grow in the crisis because experience grows you. You ought to learn something from each crisis. When a crisis is over, you need to sit down and debrief. Pray over it, review it. Be honest with yourself. Do a self-review. If you got a team, debrief with your team. Review your strengths, your weaknesses, your opportunities, your threats. Do that SWOT thing. In fact, we need to do that every day. Anyway, in fact, isn't that what God did every day of creation? He reviewed the day and said, "It is good."
Nice.
That helps you grow.
Wow.
Good. All right. So, Pastor Henry, I'm looking at our next question. In terms of the rubber
We're gonna
hitting
read.
the road, yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, are we gonna reset first? Or are we gonna go
Oh,
through?
sure, yeah, okay,
I'm
let's
looking
do
for the,
that. I
I'm
guess
looking
I
for the
missed that
reset,
in the
brother. Yes,
chat.
sir.
Elder Norman, we
All right.
want you to sit tight. We're going to be right back. Don't go anywhere. We're going to bring you back in just about 2 minutes. All right. If you are just
There
joining
you
us,
go.
you're joining us in the midst of a conversation about leadership in crisis. Our guest today has been Pastor Steve Norman. He is the communications director for the
Right.
Southern Union Conference. And we want you to know that if you are just joining us, or if you've been with us and haven't invited somebody, we've got the back half of this program or this discussion just ahead of us. So you want to invite somebody now. If you have not invited anybody, go ahead and do that. Dr. Henry or Pastor Wade, anybody, what you want to tell anybody what they want to do about our YouTube channel right now?
So on our YouTube channel, you want to go ahead there and you want to subscribe to our YouTube channel. You want to like what's happening there so that you can get a notification when we go live with new content on the YouTube side. On the Facebook side, you want to make sure you like, share, join the Facebook group. We are so excited to have our small group. We did a special live into that group about our production meeting, and so people saw a little bit of behind the scenes. And we're going to be doing some more of that, and we have some more things lined up, especially as we prepare to go into the new season. We want you to also go to our website.
Can I say this, Doc?
Yeah.
We would do more of those live production meetings. It's just we always have to wait for Dr. Henry to get his bow tie out of the cleaners before we can
Hey, the bow tie is important, brother. It's important. Man.
Good
But
stuff.
we want you to go to our website. We want to go to PRT.live and sign up for our newsletter. It's the button to send it out is about to be pressed, and you will be excited to be a part of that group to receive a lot of the information that you've been hearing week to week. We want to share that with you in another forum, another venue through the newsletter, the PRT newsletter.
Good. All right.
Right. We just want to tell our viewers, let's just get it. I was going to tell our viewers, listen, and this is the time also to kind of share too. Let's share. You know, that's my thing, share, because this leadership conversation is important. I want to say this. There is a process too, and I think we'll talk to Stephen Norman about this, on what do we do when a crisis happens in the church? Like, what's the first thing you do as a leader? I mean, do we go ahead and just make that appointment when the media comes? We just talk to them? What do we do? Maybe we could jump into some of that when we go back with our guest.
Good. And just before we do that, we're going to do that in just about 30 seconds here, but we want to just alert you. We are trying to, I think we are, about 200 subscriptions away from having 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. So we just need 200 of you. If you have not subscribed to that YouTube channel as of yet, to go ahead and hit that subscribe and to hit that little the little bell, which will notify you when we put content up that we do not do as a part of our weekly live streaming programming. And we've got some really, really fun things ahead and in store for that. So you don't want to miss out on that. All right. We're going to go ahead and bring Elder Norman back right now and jump in,
yes, sir.
Dr. Henry, to that next spot. The next question.
All right. We're back in here. Thank you so much, Elder Norman, man, for your wisdom as we try to learn a little bit more about a crisis. Listen, I have a question here, though. There's a process, right, that we need to go through as a leader in the church when a crisis happens in our church. You know, the media, they want to talk to us. They want to work. What is the first thing we should do as leaders when we experience a crisis in the church, in the school? Do we directly just talk to the media? They want to hear from the principal. They want to hear from, some authoritative figure in the school. They want to hear from the pastor. What's the first thing we should do?
All right. First of all, I just subscribed to YouTube, to the YouTube channel.
All right. There you go.
All right. Wait a minute. I have a button for that.
All right. Thank you. Now, I thought you were going to call your tailor and have him make me a bow tie.
There you go. I think that deserves a.
I love it. I love it.
All right.
Well, what are the steps?
So talk to us about the process. Yes, sir. What are the steps?
All right. Number one, the first step is to prepare before a crisis.
Okay.
Prepare before the crisis. At the Southern Union website, we have in the communication page, we have resources. One of those resources is a crisis communication manual. They're in English, Spanish, and French. Every church leader should have one. It walks you through the process, the steps, and helps you plan. We don't want to get caught unprepared for a crisis. Zelensky is able to do what he's doing because they had a plan. There are three types of plans that every church ought to have. Every pastor should make sure his church has. Number one, a crisis communication plan. That's in the manual. Number two, an emergency management plan. Those are available at, it slipped me. Brethren, when you get like me and you can't keep hair on your head, you may not be able to keep information.
Is that the risk management site?
No, it's a government site.
Oh, okay.
And I'll look it up.
Okay.
But it's or we can post it if a person wants to come back. But it'll probably come back to my mind in a minute. See, when you get 70, information will leave you without permission and won't come back for 2 or 3 days. But and it'll come back to me. But you want a crisis communication plan. You want an emergency management plan that tells you how to respond in an emergency. Then you want a business continuity plan. A business continuity plan tells how you will continue to operate your school, how you will continue to operate your church if there was a fire, if there was a flood. You've got to have all three plans.
So
you can
if
be
a crisis
the greatest
occurs,
leader if you want, but if you don't have plans, you're going to be lost and you're going to look real crazy in the time of a crisis. Zelensky is composed and he don't because he has a plan. The second thing after you have a plan is when a crisis occurs, once you know about it, the second step is fact finding. Get the facts. Then determine what type of crisis this is. What level of crisis is it? Is it type of crisis? Is it internal or external? Level, is this a local church crisis? Is it a local school crisis? Is it a conference crisis? Is it a union crisis? Is it a division crisis? We deal with the crisis differently, determining on the type of crisis it is. If it's a local church crisis that can be resolved locally, then there's no need for it to become a division or a general conference crisis. All right. If you got a crisis in your family and I'm going to make it just very simple. If the power went off in your house, that's not a neighborhood crisis, unless it happened all over the neighborhood. If you and your husband are not speaking, that's not a crisis that needs to be talked about to all your friends. Keep the fight in the ring. We deal with where it needs to be dealt with. And then beyond you determine the level of crisis, then you write your crisis, then you contact your conference communication director, who will then
Okay.
contact the union communication director, and then we work together with you to help you and guide you in responding to that local crisis.
Okay. So in other words, there's this the crisis management plan that leaders need to know. But in a crisis, especially if it deals with media, and that we definitely need to contact our local conference communication director, because there's a team that we
Correct.
have already in place that can help us deal with the answers, or just to respond to different events that has happened within our area. Okay.
Yeah, I've got a follow up, I think, to that, and I mentioned
But
the.
before that,
Hold on,
I
Elder. Just a clarification on something that was made before, on that intersection between risk management and communication here. We mentioned the risk management earlier, and some of these things, like, is there some integration or some overlap there? How do
Right.
those things work together?
Okay. There are three arms of the church that work in a crisis.
Mm-hmm.
Communication works with media and messaging. Risk management manages the liabilities. And GC Legal guides us on how to respond to mitigate legal repercussions.
Okay.
So this is similar to where we just went. In a lot, you made a comment that we need to make sure we contact the conference communications person, which will then lead to the union and on up. But we need to let our folks know that one of the reasons why we want to make sure those folks, the conference, is aware of what's happening, is because we are not on this island by ourselves. Things that are happening at the local church under the name of Seventh-day Adventist affects even the general conference because of the way our church operates. Not to get into a long dialogue as to a long tirade about how it's connected, but we have to remember that what happens locally also affects the higher up, especially when it comes to legal situations.
Good.
I like that. I like that.
There was a question that came in from Carlene Sinclair. I wanted to put up. She said, "What do we do when we know, or they know, that a fellow leader is doing something wrong, or they're engaged in nefarious activity? Not a rumor, not a gossip, but fact. What should be done? Is there an office where someone can be contacted for intervention?"
All right. Yes, there is. At each conference office, if it's has to do, you deal with you contact the person, the office related to that area. If it's education, then you contact the education superintendent. If it has to do with a literature evangelist, then publishing. All right. Or pastor, ministerial. That's the first line. All right. However, we must understand that departmental directors have recommendational authority only. They do not have executive authority in any case. The only one with executive authority is the president. No one else. If there is a concern, the response that person should have is to, number one, make sure that the report that you want to tell is true. Get the facts. Get the facts. Because once you, and it's what Proverbs says, advises, don't run with a story, don't run against somebody until you know is true, lest they embarrass you.
Mm.
Quite often when people come and they're going to be questioned. And then if all they can say is, well, somebody told me, or yeah, I think so, nobody is going to run after that. But so you get the facts. Then once you have the facts, then you can write them in a letter, send them to the conference president, conference secretary, conference treasurer, the whole administrative team. All right. There's a reason for that, but do that. Once you do that, sign your name and contact information. If you're not willing to sign your name to it, if you're not willing to put your contact information to it, your email address or phone number, it's not going to go very far. Be willing, if you're going to make that report, stand by it and give something and say something that you can stand by, because once you make that report, if it has legal repercussions, you're going to be deposed. And when you're deposed, you're going to have to go to sit before a lawyer, and you're going to have to take an oath that you're telling the truth and that what you know you're witness to or you can stand by. Once you're deposed, understand that it's even further than that. If you have texted this information, if you have placed it on social media, they're going to impound your phone, and they are going to review your entire social media feed, all of them. And all of that becomes material either for or against you, or to support your statement. So that's now that made a whole lot of people who are listening say, you know what?
I ain't telling nobody nothing.
I ain't saying a thing.
I better think this thing through before I go running somewhere.
I'm gonna pray about it. That's what
you don't always hear running with something because somebody told us. We are checking everything out. I have received calls myself from the lawyer saying, Pastor Norman, we need your phone because we need to be able to, if people texted you, we want to be able to go through all of them. We had a case at the Southern Union when I first came where they impounded about 6 of our computers because of a case that happened in one of our conferences. But because they knew that we advise and we are connected, they impounded our computers.
Wow.
Interestingly, the union president at that time of the Retsa said, well, they got my computer. He says, I think when they go through it, they may get saved because the only thing they're going to find is some sermons about Jesus.
Come on now. So Elder Norman, let me go ahead, Raj.
No, I was going to say, Elder Norman, you just pulled the sheets back. A lot of our if I was just sitting in the, I'm sitting here listening to this, I'm saying, shoot, I can't say nothing. I can't get on Facebook. I got to be what I love, what I get it. Why? How come we don't tell our members these things? So what are some of the things that are holding back this information? Because this information is critical.
Yeah.
Well, they're hearing it today.
There you go.
On the
I'm so glad
round table.
Had this platform so they could hear it.
There you go.
And I hope they will tell somebody. But and they ought to be hitting that like button right now, that share button right now.
There you go.
Saying y'all need to hear this because before y'all go running your mouth, you better run to the Lord and make sure
that's right.
that you know what you think you know is right.
Well, here's a question that I have as a follow-up that I'm actually surprised that I haven't seen come up in the chat. in relation to our sister's question, to Carlene's question. So we said that the first step number one was to, and we articulated what step number one was. I'm surprised nobody asked, well, what about Matthew 18? We said the first thing that we were going to do was go to the conference administrator. At least I was asking, well, what about those people who say, well, the first thing you do is go to the individual. You know that something's happening wrong. Well, why not? True. And my question is, are there some times where Matthew 18 is just not on the table? You've witnessed somebody doing something wrong. Are there some legal responsibilities or some other things that may say, okay, you may want to do that one-on-one, but you still need to go and do something in addition to the Matthew 18?
All right. I think that I'm thinking, but I think that the Matthew 18 observation and counsel is critical, and I did overlook it. I think that many cases could be resolved if people simply used Matthew 18. One of the things that I learned early on is that it's best to resolve cases at the lowest level possible.
Right.
Many years ago, while I was a pastor, there was a cross burning at one of the academies, and I was called to lead the response to that as the senior pastor of the state that I was in. And one of the first things that we determined was that we would seek to resolve it at the lowest level possible. So we met with the school. After we got nowhere with the school, then we had to go to the next level, to the union, to the conference, and then on. But you want to start at the lowest level possible and then try to get it. And once he got all the way to the division, we brought it all the way back to the local level and then tried to resolve it. There's some principles that Martin Luther King used for protests. And I think it's very important for us to have in mind in crisis or in conflict. Number one, fact finding. Number two, purging. What is meant by purging? Purge your motives, purge your emotions of anger. Bring yourself to a place where you are operating completely in love and in holiness, because God's activity, Jehovah is the personal name of God, and it represents the righteousness and holiness of God and his love, his moral attributes. When God acts to rebuke sin, he acts in love. And when we act to rebuke sin, it must not be from animosity, not be from vindictiveness, but in love. And that's what Martin Luther King was calling for. And then once you move beyond purging, then you go to negotiation, discussions. And if discussions, and with it, in the case of the civil rights movement, if discussions did not work on the negotiation, then it went to protest. And I baptized one of the ladies who participated in the marches in Selma. And she told me that before they could march, they had to go through these steps. They had to know the facts. They had to purge themselves through prayer. And then they had to out of anger and vindictiveness, because he says, if they did not feel that they could go to the Edmund Pettus Bridge in love, They were to stay at the church and pray.
Mm.
She and her husband were two of the ones that were able to go to the bridge.
Wow.
And because they had been through that process, she was able to look at the state trooper, see him through eyes of love, but at the same time, look down the barrel of his gun and sing, I shall not be moved.
Woo!
Wow.
So you're saying based on Pastor Paul's question here is and I'm looking at the chat, and Colleen has responded to the fact that there is a fact involved and there is something that definitely needs to be reported. You're saying there's still that need to go through Matthew 18. Am I hearing it correctly?
Okay. There are some cases that I would go through Matthew 18. All right. And in most cases, we could. The only time that I counsel a person not to go through Matthew 18 is when there's physical danger. All right. When when there's credible evidence that if they were to contact this person, that there would be this. I had a case when I was pastoring where a person made a volunteer at my church made an inappropriate comment to a woman and told her that she could not receive the services of the church unless there was a personal contribution that could not be carried to the bank. And that's just as how I'm going to say it.
Mercy. She
spoke about it to one of my members, and he got back to me.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke to the man. The person who he said that to was not a member, so she was not bound by Matthew 18. But I was, as his pastor. So I went to him. Mm-hmm. Okay. He wants to talk to her one-on-one. And he wants me to make that available. I said, no, it's not going to happen. The reason why I did not let it happen was because he was a black belt. And he had temper anger issues. So my response was, we will meet you at the attorney's office.
Mm. Yeah. Understand.
Wow. No, this is a lot. That's a lot of information. When we are faced with a crisis, we got to take this thing seriously. We got to go through the preparation, have the plan. We know we have a team. It's wonderful to be a part of a church who we have some things in place already so that we can go through this thing in a way that will be effective and a way that will be transparent as well. So I just appreciate you sharing this information with us. I do have one question though to ask.
Can I respond? Go ahead. Because I see something in there. Colleen seems to be very much concerned that we're not getting a fair chance, perhaps, in the church. She says there are some issues that must be reported to the state, and if the church prefers to be ignorant until I don't think the church prefers to be ignorant. And I think we have to, and I'm saying the church. Now there may be some individuals,
sure,
but I don't think as a church. I've been pastoring now in this church since 1973, 49 years. I've watched us come a long way. There was a time when, there was some hiding and there was not. But in recent times, I would say in the last 25 years, we have some policies that are in the North American Division Policy Book, and that conference leaders are duty bound to live by and to to and to work with, I am not seeing any credible reports ignored. Now, does it do what they do? They always get a quick response? No, because it takes a lot of process. Again, the stories have to be heard. Both stories have to be heard. Sometimes you can get in it and it can get very drawn out. You can't make a snap decision, because if you make a snap decision, the decision that you make will affect not only that employee, but their family, their children. And then after you make that snap decision, then you find out that it was a false accusation. Then you've got a bigger problem. If you move at the snap of your finger, you may be destroyed at the snap of your neck.
Yeah.
You can't make snap judgments.
Yeah.
All right.
And I saw also in the chat, Patrice asked a question. Now, obviously, without knowing the particulars about what happened at the local church, why it's at the union level here, at least we have one thing we should let our churches know, that you do have a conference and the union levels that are there to help mitigate issues that may have started at the local church. So sometimes it gets there, but it's not there because it's something the church didn't do. It gets there because of where the legal piece lands.
Whoa.
Right. All right, Elder Norman, looks like your camera is frozen on us again there.
Yes.
Right.
All right. But listen, wow, there is. I hope that this has answered a lot of questions for a lot of people when we talk about leading in crisis, and particularly the communication role, the role that communication plays, and how leaders need to be transparent. We need to protect. There's a tightrope. It sounds like that that we walk to be leaders. And the reality is this: I when I've talked about leadership in my congregations, I often say people look at the pastor as being the leader. People look at the conference president as being a leader. And I talk about having read lots of books on leadership and gone to leadership conferences and everything. But there's one thing that makes a leader, and that is, if you've got a follower, then you're a leader. And so every parent, you're a leader. Every big brother, cousin, uncle, if you've got one person that is following you, you're a leader. And so the things that we've talked about today, the things that we have explored today, are things that can apply to you. All of us are going to be in a position at some point in life to manage a crisis. It might be a personal crisis, might be a family crisis, a church crisis, a departmental crisis, a crisis in the classroom. And so, Elder Norman, we've taken a lot from this today.
It can even be a crisis on the playground. It's
Mercy, a crisis on the playground. Yes. And so just thank you so much. We are out of time at this point. But Elder, we've just been blessed. We know that our audience has been blessed and enriched by some of the tips and tools that we have talked about and we've heard you share with us today. So thank you again so very much.
Yes.
You're welcome.
Yes, definitely appreciate you.
I'm definitely going to ask you, when I'm in a crisis, is the mud wet or is the mud dry? I know that.
Is it wet or
come
is it
on
dry?
now.
Whatever it is, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord.
Come on.
All right. And look, we can't forget
my.
lament. Come on now.
Yeah.
We can't forget
that lament thing. Mercy. Again,
That
leadership
is-
tool
that
in the
is
crisis.
powerful.
Let people, lament. And that's the ramp, he said. That's the ramp to praise and worship. The ramp to praise
Come
and
on
worship.
now.
That's
This
awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. Good
appreciate
stuff.
you, Doc. Appreciate you so
We've
much.
learned so much today. We have learned so much today. I again thank you to our guest, who has been a pioneer in leading in communications, in leading churches, in connecting with people. I'm just so glad to be in his union and to be one who works directly with him as a communications director there. And we want to thank our viewers for being with us. Remember to support Pastors Roundtable at the Pastors Roundtable website. You go on our support page, and we're looking forward to doing greater things and connecting with you as we continue to partner together to make ministry relevant.
Oh, I'm sorry. I saw Elder Norman look like he was trying to get one more word in, so I wanted to give him that opportunity before we wrap up.
We'll give him one more word.
That's our resource. Again. That's our resource part.
I saw the finger, so I had to defer.
Yeah. I just want to say that as crisis managers, and any of us, we must be like the sons of Issachar. Men who understand the times and know what we should do.
Ought to do.
We have to pray for that. And I want to say crisis management is a new department in the Seventh-day Adventist Church. It's only when I started in communication, it was not the case. We was not present. This is a new thing that's in the last I've been in communication since 1991. And it was started shortly after I came to communication as a new thing. And it is through the work that we all do that we now have the transparency, and that this church has become better at handling the problems that we have, that Colleen and others have been concerned about today. We are committed to trying to deal with these. But again, it's a process that's very difficult. It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, but we thank you for your trust and your belief that as a church, we're doing the best we can.
Amen. Well, we thank you so much for your service.
Yes, Doc.
Absolutely.
And I was going to say, if there's any resources that you have later on, even after this show, that you'd like to give to us, we'll definitely love to have that so that we could put that for our viewers so that they know that there is a process and these things are effective for our church.
Absolutely. Okay. You can look for them in the show notes on the website. We want you to make sure that you go and check out the website as well for this episode. Roger, I see a prognostication, a prophecy in the chat. Deandra is saying that we will get the 1,000 subs this week. She says we
have lamented.
Way to continue praising. Bless the Lord. Oh my soul.
Praise God. We appreciate your support. And we look forward to seeing you on next week. Now, we want you to know that next week will be our last show for this season, season 4. We're going to take a break after next week, and we will start back again in April on season number 5 of the Pastor already.
Mercy.
We are excited about what's going to happen in season 5. We're already beginning to plan. We have a very special announcement we will make next week in preparation of season 5 that we want to share with you. That's coming in May, and we look forward to sharing that with you. And we thank you for partnering with us as we make ministry relevant,
resourced,
and real. God bless.